can we please give a huge Bababa welcome to our second Babada of the evening, Claire Cordell, who's going to talk to us about MDMA.
Oh, that's a bit scary. And I'm going to overshare, is that all right?
Yeah!
So, I'm going to talk about the transformational use of MDMA as a therapeutic tool, because MDMA has the ability to heal our societies, to heal us spiritually, and to heal our relationships. So I think it's really important. So, my ex-husband and I founded a charity called Littlegate Farm. 10 years ago. Ooh. And just like any normal family, we were married for quite a long time. We had 3 children. We entered into family life with a lot of optimism, not any real skills of how to be in relationship, but a lot of couples therapy. But nothing really worked. I don't know if any of you have heard of the Gottman's work, but they did a piece of research that looked into what you needed to really fail at marriage, to end up divorced. And they came up with a theory called the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse. So if you have criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling in your marriage, and we have those 4 pillars very strongly in ours, you're very much likely to head for divorce, and which is what we did. So in 2019, I left Littlegate Farm, and we separated and divorced. Now this bit of the story is not very nice, but we started only communicating through solicitors. It was acrimonious, it was horrible and ugly, and we didn't have the tools or the resources or the compassion for each other to do it very nicely. 3 years passed, and our children found it very difficult to be co-parented by 2 people who couldn't really talk to one another. Our twins were kind of heading up for their 18th birthday, and our son really wanted to have some sort of celebration with both his parents in the same room. And I really couldn't think of anything worse. And I really cursed Gwyneth Paltrow for her conscious uncoupling. Because what the fuck are we supposed to do with that? It's really difficult. But it did get me thinking. It got me thinking, actually, surely there's got to be a better way of us doing this. And life throws its spanners sometimes, doesn't it? So I'm a member of the Psychedelic Society in London. Anyone else here? Member of the Psychedelic Society? And as by chance, as luck would have it, just after our children's 18th birthday, I saw a talk on MDMA in couples therapy. And it was by a renowned psychotherapist from California who had a PhD in MDMA and couples therapy that he wrote in the 1980s. So I always thought that MDMA as ecstasy was kind of aligned with coke or speed. It was for ravers, it was a little bit grimy. It wasn't really something that I thought was a classic psychedelic and that had any therapeutic benefit. I was a bit snobby about it. But I guess what really caught my interest was the bit that where it says MDMA for couples. So I went to his talk, and it was really inspiring. It was really compelling. There was loads of research from the 60s to the 80s on couples therapy using MDMA as a therapeutic tool. So, in 1985, even though there was loads of research really showing its therapeutic benefit, it was banned worldwide. So that's kind of when the research stopped. It has restarted again, which I'll come on to in a minute. But his talk was really clear that actually MDMA is a really, really useful tool if it's used in a therapeutic context, and it can really help people repair their marriages. That's great, I thought. But I asked him, what about divorced couples who want to repair so they can co-parent better, so they can be friends? And he said, yeah, he worked with lots of divorced couples. So then I wondered, could I ask my ex-husband, would he do an MDMA session with me? What do you think he said, people? So, a month later, I've got to see if the red dot works. We flew to Portugal. So, the way MDMA couples therapy works is, it's a 5-hour session. So the therapist stays in California. We had a screen, online screen, and we took 125 milligrams of pure MDMA, and we settled down to see what would happen. Now, we haven't spoken for years, so you can imagine there was some apprehension. But the fear, the resentment, the anger, and the distrust slowly ebbed away. And after about 20 minutes, we started to really recognise each other for the strengths that we'd had in our marriage, but also how we'd co-parented together. We thanked each other, truly, from our hearts. We forgave each other. We shared gratitude for how we'd been throughout our marriage in the early days and throughout our 30s and 40s, but also the way we'd looked after our children. We acknowledged each other's perspectives, which I know that might sound odd to some of you that have been married for a long time, but that's something we really, really struggled to do as a married couple. We really struggled to acknowledge each other's reality. But on MDMA, it was really clear that we could both have different perspectives and see the same situation very differently. Both of those things were true and real, and it was okay. So during that 5-hour session, we also learned new ways of communicating with one another. We learned tools of how we could go about co-parenting, how that we could become friends, actually. In our marriage, we'd had loads of therapy. I mean, honestly, I could put up a massive list of all the different styles we tried, and nothing really worked. They'd all been kind of sticking plasters. And that's partly, I guess, because, you know, we ran a social business together, and we also have a daughter with severe learning disabilities who's quite challenging. But actually, it was just that we really couldn't get it together through ordinary therapy. But MDMA was different. It really, really, really drilled down into the heart of the issue. We were really able to meet each other with compassion and empathy and kindness. It was, for the first time probably ever, an enormous reset for us. So let's pause the story there, if I may. So how does MDMA work? Well, MDMA is an empathogen. So that means it increases empathy. It creates a cascade of serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin in the brain. And those three chemicals create a feeling of what you would experience as a young baby when you first have love for somebody. It mimics a feeling of safety and openness, which allows you to communicate really clearly. It's not like a traditional psychedelic in that you can't function. It allows you to think quite clearly. It allows you to get up and go for a drink, go for a dance if you want to, go to the toilet. You're still kind of lucid, but you're able to see the world through a new lens, see the person that you're talking to through a new lens. It creates an opportunity for you to feel self-compassion too. So suddenly, for the first time, I think both of us suddenly had this recognition of how we'd shown up, setting up Little Gate, but also as parents, under quite difficult, challenging circumstances, we felt empathy for ourselves and for each other. The way MDMA works is it neutralises all the difficult memories and feelings so that you can really access them and start to work with them without any fear or judgment. So MDMA is a tool that gives people access to their own innate healing capacity, and I think that that's really something that gets quite missed. So this slide's a little bit, I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of history, because I think it's really important for us to understand where we are with MDMA at the moment. So MDMA is not just useful for therapy for couples, it's also been trialled for a number of years by an organisation called MAPS that some of you might know about, for PTSD, for anorexia, for addictions, alcohol addictions, for autism, for anxiety, social anxiety and depression. It's also being used a lot for people who have suicidal ideation, so it's been used in lots of different ways. It's believed that around 350 million people across the world have PTSD, and actually the research that's coming out now looking at chronic PTSD and complex PTSD is really, really compelling with MDMA used in therapeutic context. And one of the other things that I just wanted to point out was this slide over here, and I get to use the red dotty thing now. So it's naming MDMA as ecstasy down here. Now, ecstasy is actually MDMA with other things in it, but for the sake of this slide, we're calling it ecstasy. But as you can see, alcohol, heroin and crack cocaine are the most dangerous drugs on our planet at the moment. Ecstasy is down here, like right down the bottom, with psilocybin, LSD. So it's actually got a very low risk profile. So what they're finding with the clinical trials is that 2/3 of people who were diagnosed with complex PTSD are having such relief of symptoms that they're no longer reaching the diagnosis of PTSD, which is extraordinary. And I think as a society, we have a duty to kind of look at these medicines with completely new eyes and start to think about how do we bring them into our country, how do we ensure that there's some equity and people are allowed to access these medications for their own well-being and mental health. So MDMA at the moment is still Schedule 1, and that's hopefully going to change next year or the year after in the UK, because there is such compelling research, but also the safety profiles are really good, particularly if it's done with good screening. There are a few contraindications, although there are some, and people need to check that first before they take it. But I just kind of a very brief potted history of MDMA. It was actually synthesized by Merck in 1912 as a weight loss drug, and then shelved because they couldn't find any benefit for it. And then throughout the 50s and 60s, 70s into the 80s, therapists were using it in therapeutic settings, and then unfortunately it went into the party scene and became a party drug, and then by 1986 it was banned worldwide. But actually what went out the window was the opportunity to use it therapeutically, and it went underground. So therapists are still working with it all over the world, but they just weren't allowed to do it legally, but that's starting to change now. So in case you don't know this guy over here, this is Rick Doblin, and he spent the whole of his adult life campaigning for MDMA and other psychedelics to be brought into use for therapeutic tools. He's raised something like £100 billion for research, just purely through philanthropy, because it's not patented. There's no money to be made at the moment, so he's had to raise the money himself, really, through donations, which is an incredibly inspiring story. So I encourage you to look him up if you're interested. So the legal position at the moment is Australia, in July of this year, legalised MDMA and psilocybin magic mushrooms for therapeutic use. So it's the first country to go, which is so exciting. Unfortunately, we've lost all our best and biggest and brightest stars, so they've all gone to Australia to work on these trials. But it does mean that they're kind of practicing, so the way I view it is they're practicing on the Australians first, and then all of our doctors will come back here to kind of embed it into the UK. So the only good thing, as far as I can see, about Brexit is that because of Brexit, the Medicines and Health Product Regulatory Agency here in the UK are likely to legalise MDMA and psilocybin alongside ketamine next year before the rest of Europe. So that's really good news. So that's the exciting bit about Brexit, because they've got to make use of it somehow. So I bet you're wondering, what happened to the Cordells next? They're really grateful for this picture. So that's a Jack Cornfield quote, by the way. So after our MDMA session, we came back to the UK, and obviously life went back to normal, except it didn't. Everything changed for us, really. We can hang out together as a family. We've got a daughter with a learning disability, and we've had to sort out her care this year, and we've been able to do it together. Our reset has had an immense impact on our family lives. We're able to be friends, we're able to communicate better, we're able to sort things out, we're able to work together with respect and kindness. Years of therapy really, really didn't work for us. And it was right, actually, that we got divorced. But now, as we show up each day and as we talk to each other, we can show up completely differently, which has been immensely healing for both of us as individuals, but also our children and our wider family. It has been immensely healing. So I just wanted to put up this resources page and take photos if you want to, if you're interested. But if you haven't seen it, the Netflix set of films, How to Change Your Mind, is excellent, and there's a really wonderful episode on MDMA. The MAPS Institute has got lots of resources which are really, it's really compelling, amazing the research that's going on there, and there's research happening in London and Cardiff this coming year. Awareness Explorers, this episode is about couples therapy with MDMA, and the Huberman podcast talks about the pharmacology of MDMA and other psychedelics, and of course the Psychedelic Society. So if you want to become more involved and more informed of what's going on in the UK, this is an excellent resource. So some of you might be wondering, what is this middle-aged woman standing up here talking about this for, oversharing? Obviously there's personal risk and there's professional risk. Why would she get up and do this? It's a Schedule 1 medication. There's still a chance to be arrested for talking about these things because they're not legal yet. But we have to, don't we? Because we have a legal imperative, we have a moral imperative to start talking about these healing modalities that can really help people. We're having a mental health crisis. It's not just going to work for people like David and I, it's also going to be helping the people who are really struggling. Now, I absolutely know that it's not suitable for everybody. Of course it's not. We have to be discerning about that. But actually there is so much therapeutic benefit in psychedelics that we really have to start seeing this differently, and we need to start becoming more aware about it. It's a bit like the AI stuff. You know, we need to become more informed. We've been spun a bit of a lie about the war on drugs. And actually, what we have done is we've flooded the world with opiates, with the legal drugs, and we've banned all the ones that can actually have healing because there's actually no money in them at the moment. So, my call to action for all of you is to go away and get more involved, more informed, and find out about how these medications can be used. I really want to see a future when we can access these through the NHS, in our communities, in our towns, and that they are delivered equitably, which means that you don't have to pay £35,000 to go and have a session with a plant medicine or MDMA. So that's really it. I just want to say a special thanks to David, because he's actually here, and to my daughter Francesca. Unfortunately, Matt's on holiday. Thanks, Cord.